the Rambler Network.
Hello, welcome back to Casablanca. In this episode, I am talking about Bridge to Terabithia, which has always been one of my favorite movies. It was directed by Gábor Csupó, who had earlier created Rugrats, Our Real Monsters, and The Wild Thornberrys. It was based on a screenplay by David L. Paterson, and starring Josh Hutcherson, AnnaSophia Robb, Zooey Deschanel, Bailee Madison, and Robert Patrick. Bridge to Terabithia started as a novel written by Katherine Paterson in 1977. It's often shelved as a children's book, but its emotional weight has left many adult readers in tears. And that emotional core isn't fiction. Paterson wrote it after her son David lost his best friend, Lisa Hill, who was struck by lightning at the age of 8. David would later co-write the screenplay for the 2007 film, making this story's journey from grief to screen deeply personal. First, I'm going to talk about the 2007 version. You probably remember the trailer painting it as the whimsical Narnia knockoff. But the actual movie, a raw emotional story about childhood friendship, escapism, and loss. Yes, Terabithia exists, but only in the minds of Jess and Leslie. It's not a fantasy world we travel to. It's the lens through which they survive the very real world around them. And that's where the contrast between Jess and Leslie's families becomes so important. Leslie's home is filled with warmth, freedom, and creativity. Her parents are writers. They're open-minded, affectionate, and supportive. Her home life feels like a safe place to explore who she is. Jess, meanwhile, comes from a more traditional and emotionally distant household. His dad is hardened by work and stress. His mom is overwhelmed. There's little room for self-expression. In fact, when Leslie starts talking about magical kingdoms and dark masters, Jess doesn't understand how to react. There's a moment in the 2007 movie that perfectly shows this contrast. Jess walking home from Leslie's house. He's smiling. There's a visible spring in his step. But as he approaches his own home, you see him physically deflate. His shoulders sink, his pace slows. That silent shift tells you everything. No words needed. Earlier in the film, Jess tries to get a handful of chips and is yelled at by his sister. When he's in the Burke house, he's offered chips from a suspiciously similar-looking bowl. Mental health isn't explicitly discussed in the book or the films, but it's a critical subtext. Jess finds peace in drawing and in his friendship with Leslie. Terabithia isn't just a game, it's a coping mechanism, a way to process emotions neither child fully understands. When Leslie dies, by the way, spoiler, Jess doesn't just grieve a friend. He loses the one person who gave him permission to be himself. That leads me to one of the more overlooked adaptations, the 1985 TV movie. It's simpler and honestly less emotionally nuanced than the 2007 version. The budget was limited, and while it sticks close to the book's events, it lacks the visual metaphor of Terabithia as a constructed world. The budget was limited, and while it sticks close to the book's events, it lacks the visual metaphor of Terabithia as a constructed world. Still, it was the first attempt to bring the story to screen, and for some, it holds a nostalgic charm. But if you want a fuller emotional picture, the 2000 film, despite its misleading marketing, does justice to the story's themes. Now, book versus movie, the 2007 adaptation stays surprisingly faithful. Some dialogue is lifted directly from the book, but where the book lives more internally, especially with Jess's thoughts, the movie fills those gaps visually. Like that walk home I mentioned. The biggest shift is how the movie represents Terabithia itself. In the book, it's all pretend. We never see the fantasy. But the movie visualizes their imagination with CGI creatures and forest kingdoms. It walks a fine line, and while some viewers feel it was a tonal mismatch, others argue it lets us feel what Jess and Leslie feel, to see the world not as it is, but as they need it to be. In the end, Terabithia isn't about the magic of Terabithia. It's about the magic of connection, of two kids finding refuge in each other, of grief reshaping a young kid's world, and of imagination as both sanctuary and survival. So whether you read the book in 5th grade, caught the 85 version on TV, or saw the 2007 film expecting epic fantasy and got hit with emotional whiplash, the story sticks with you. It's one of those rare works that respects the emotional complexity of kids. That shows how a single friendship can shape you forever. As I said at the beginning of this has always been one of my favorite movies. When I first saw it, I immediately loved it. And when I started writing around that time, and I wanted to write. It's going to sound weird. I wrote a Bridge of Terabithia fan fiction, and I liked it. I thought it was a good idea at first, at the time. Basically, it was a prequel based on the movie. I hadn't read the book at the time, but based on the movie, you know how, there's Jess's house and Leslie's house. They're next to each other. Well, like, the properties are next to each other. In the fan fiction I wrote, basically, Jess's father grew up in the house that they live in. Jess's mother grew up in Leslie's house. And basically, in the fan fiction I wrote, Jess's mom made up everything and wrote it all down. And Leslie found it in a book, like a diary journal thing in her closet. And so that explains why when they're in the tree and Jess goes, "What should we call this place?" And Leslie looks like she's thinking for a second. And then in my fanfiction, it's like, oh, she's remembering, like, what was it called in the book? Terabithia. But then after I finished writing it, I decided not to post it. Once I started thinking more about it, I realized it wasn't really that good. Mostly for the fact that it basically takes away from Leslie. She's supposed to be this wildly inventive, creative person who introduces this whole world to Jess. She uses her imagination to create stories and this fantasy world, like he uses his imagination to do the drawings. And by having her basically taking everything from a book written by Jess's mom, that takes it from her. And I didn't like that after I thought about it. And the only reason I'm bringing it up here, and it's literally the first time I've ever talked about, I've never told anybody that. Like I said, I decided not to post it. This was back in 2008. This is like a year after the movie came out. I decided not to post it, and this is the first time I'm talking about it. And the only reason I'm even mentioning it now is basically this is how much I love this movie. There's not a whole lot I wrote fan fiction about. I wrote a Bridge of Terabithia fan fiction, and then the other one that I wrote is so random. It's even more random. See, Terabithia makes sense to have a fan fiction written about it. The other fan fiction I wrote, which I also never published or posted, was a wedding singer fan fiction. What happened to Julia and Robbie after they got married, and it was like it took place in the present, like, because the movie it was made in '98 and it took place in the '80s, and this basically took place. My fan fiction took place in the current present at the time, which was 2009, and it's like they had kids and what their life was like, and I also never the two fanfics I wrote I never published, and you can kind of see why they weren't that good. It's not something that I talk about anymore. This is literally the first time I've ever talked about it. I have never told anybody that. Yeah, and before you ask, no, I don't have them anymore. That was like 5 computers ago, and I made a conscious effort not to transfer them over. Whenever I get a new computer, I transfer over, like, I basically save all the important stuff that I feel like I need to save, and none of those fan fictions ever got transferred over. So I lost them like 15 years ago. So no, I don't have them. Don't ask to see them. And I don't even remember I wouldn't know. I wouldn't ever try to recreate that. This was Bridge of Terabithia. I've been wanting to do this movie since season 1, and this is season 4. I don't know why I never did it before now. There's a lot of movies I'm like, I want to do that one. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I can't do this one yet. Even though it's my podcast, I can do whatever I want with it. And yeah, I'm doing it now because I wanna. And cut.
The Rambler Network.